fights with passion, and he inspires.
Are you ready for a war?
All right, welcome back to From 8 Arbitration. It's Monday. Now today, I've got the four horsemen on. I've got James Henry the Wolf, David Groskoff, John Cruz, and Rob Cozier. And we're going to talk about this idea going around of the 4-day, 10-hour-a-day work week, okay? We talk at length about it and give our position on it. And I don't hold back, okay? Because I think it's dangerous to my people. And so that's what's going to be today's episode. Tomorrow, Tuesday, I'm going to do my episode, all right? And I'm going to talk about a few contractual things and kind of talk about where we've been, places we're going. I'm going to do that tomorrow, okay? Then we're going to have also this week a Lions Den episode. I'm going to put that up probably Wednesday. Then we're going to have an NBA roundtable on those NBAs that are on the CLC slate. And I'll probably have that out Thursday. And so I might have an episode Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. All right? I'm battling a hell of a sinus infection. And it is kicking my ass. And finally today I got my doctor prescribed me some antibiotics. And so hopefully I'll be done with this. But I've been dealing with this for about a month. And I went on vacation. Obviously couldn't go to the clinic. Then I went to a little minute clinic before I went to New York. And she prescribed me some kind of nasal spray. It didn't do shit. But it is kicking my ass. All right? And so I'm just going to do this one. I was going to do an episode after the episode I'm putting up. Not going to do that. I'm going to bed, and then I'll wake up in the morning before I head off to South Carolina, and I'll talk about that tomorrow. I'll do an episode tomorrow, okay, and then I'll put up some more this week. So we'll have a full week of it. But, yeah, the Four Horsemen, I think you're going to enjoy it. We give our opinions on the 4-day work week and 10 hours a day. We go over just about every facet. I'm sure there's something that we missed, and y'all can let me know. But enjoy that, all right? So here it is, my conversation with the Four Horsemen. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll talk to y'all tomorrow, all right? Love you. Bye. All right. I've got the Four Horsemen with me tonight. And they're going to talk about this collective bargaining, whatever it was, this collective bargaining conference that just happened. I've been on vacation, so I haven't been able to get on. And then we went to New York and had a great time there yesterday. And so I'm finally able to get back on and do an episode. And so I wanted them to come on and talk about this collective bargaining conference, specifically the 4-day, 10-hour-a-day work week. And because I'm against it. I am vehemently against it. I don't like anything about it. I know people saying, hey, but I'll get some extra days off. I think that it's an absolute disaster waiting to happen for the city letter carriers. And me being a city letter carrier, I'll tell you why. And I've got the Wolf, James Henry on. I've got David Groskoff. I've got my brother Cruz and my brother Cozier. Even though it's spelled kosher. But he just got my ass. He's like, hey, I've stood that long enough with you mispronouncing my shit. It's kosher. And so, Rob, for all the times I've called you kosher, I apologize.
I accepted.
Thank you, sir. And so I've got them on with me tonight. We're going to talk about it a little bit. Because the way it's been sold, I just don't like it. And I'm going to tell you my opinion, and y'all can come in, agree or disagree. That's what this is about. But in this collective bargaining conference, and everybody needs to understand that there's just propositions, basically, just a bunch of ideas all week long. Here's all these ideas. Nothing's set in stone. This 4-day work week's not set in stone. It's just all these things shot out there, possibilities that could happen, proposals that could happen. Nothing was, like I said, set in stone throughout the week. Would y'all agree with that?
Yes.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. One of those things was the 4-day, 10-hour day work week. However, that's going to happen. And I'll tell you my problems. And y'all can come in and tell me where I'm wrong or where I'm right or whatever. And y'all can discuss it how you want. But as a city letter carrier myself, I've been doing this 34 years. I've had 34 summers, 34 winters, 34 Christmases. I've had 34 everything. Here's my problem with the 4-day, 10-hour a day work week. And then I'll give it to y'all after that. But I'm gonna say my piece and then I'll let y'all have it. When you talk about me working 10-hour a day, the first thing that I think of as a city letter carrier is my safety. That's the first thing I think of. Because management does not care about my safety. They've shown that over and over again. Management has gone after, you saw these metrics long ago, and I think that we should have done something about it, but we didn't. These hour office times that y'all know, y'all are presidents, and James, you're a vice president. The hour office time has been reduced to 45 minutes office time. Now you see that they're reduced to 30 minutes in some places. You see your president actively giving them office time when we say that we're going to reduce the 33 minutes of fixed office time to 20 minutes of fixed office time. All of these things to me as a city letter carrier come into play. That management does not want us in the office. They want us on the street. And they're going to do everything humanly possible to get me, Corey Walton, the city letter carrier, on the street faster, whatever that's going to be. And I know some of you are going to talk about this Caser Street or consolidated casing and stuff like that, where they could bring in people that just case mail. You can come in and deliver for 10 hours. And I know y'all talk about that. But for my safety, and I'm going to read y'all some things. These are some things that people sent me today to kind of to show you what I'm talking about when management comes from our safety. These are scatter messages that were sent out today that people sent me, and I got some of them offline. Here's one. Let's go, team. Don't slow down. Now we're almost there. That's a scanner message from management to light blue. Let's go, team. Don't slow down. Now remember, we're right here at the footsteps of summer. It's already 100 degrees in some places. Here's another. Okay, staff, I know it is hot, but you all need to stop sitting in your vehicles between drags. Too many stationary events without delivery. Get your drink of water and keep moving. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. I'll read that last part. Get your drink of water and keep moving. Talking about too many stationary events. We didn't address stationary events. All of this stuff is coming back to play with this stupid ass 4 days, 10 hours a day. And here's another one. I'm going to address this on my episode tomorrow, but it says the carrier's name based on the last 39.99 done, and where you're on the route, you should have all mail delivered and be back at the station by 7 p.m. So that's a 1 day 39.99, trying to set a delivery standard for us, which we don't have. But you get what I'm talking about, where I'm coming from. Management does not care about our safety. And so they're going to put me in a vehicle for 9.5 or 10 hours right in the middle of fucking summer. And that would be the top of the list for me, is my safety, the carrier's safety, is that we have no reprieve. We have nothing that will protect us during the summer months. I was even going to talk about things that we could do to help the carriers during the summer, but fuck, if you got a 10-hour day, what the fuck are you going to do to help them? You know, I was talking about having some kind of mandatory begin tour, case and DPS, whatever, but you're putting me out there in the hottest part of the damn day for 10 hours. And so y'all can talk about that. But the other thing is overtime. You've got carriers, and I know that all the carriers in my station are on the ODL. Some of them need it. James, you and I talked extensively when he agreed to take the caps off of the 12 and 60, that we did not
Yes,
provide a living wage. And since you did not provide a living wage, they took the caps off the 12 and 60 so that carrier could work themselves literally to death trying to make enough money to survive. Everywhere you go, James, you talk about that. Food on the table, roof over your head, food and clothes on your back. And so
absolutely.
you've got overtime, to me, will be gone. You cannot convince me otherwise. Uh, Groskopf, you were talking earlier, and James talks about this as well. The union way is 8 hours of work, 8 hours of recreation, and 8 hours of rest. That's what the unions have always fought for. That's what they initially fought for, is the 8 hour day to make enough money to survive on an 8 hour day. And now you're going to have us work 10 hours, no overtime. I see a huge problem with that. I think that this falls hand in hand with what the postmaster general, when he got up there and was talking about. We're going to reduce overtime. Now, again, I've said this before, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong. Brian came up with this himself. The post office does not come to Brian with this. Brian came up with this himself and proposed this himself. Now, I know that he said he sent out a survey and 60 or 70% agreed with it. Something had to get him to put that on the survey. What was it? Does anybody know what got him to put that shit on a survey to send out? A president of a major union sending some shit out about, hey, I'm going to take this 8 hours of work, 8 hours of recreation, and 8 hours of rest, and I'm going to change that to you're going to work 10 hours a fucking day. We're going to help the Postal Service cut out overtime, and that's exactly what's happening. Nobody can ever convince me otherwise.
Well, let me
What?
say here,
Yeah,
let me
go ahead.
say here in response to what you were saying, does anybody know exactly where it originated from? We do know, meaning the idea for this 410. We do know that it was not presented by the Postal Service to the NLC. Rather, uh, the presentation of it was presented from the NLC, seemingly the president of this 410. And I want to make it unequivocally clear that this may not be the position of the entire NLC executive board or the president itself, but I am personally vehemently opposed to the 410 structure of carriers having to work these inordinate amount of hours. Now, there are carriers that work overtime, but you're talking about on a consistent minimum of 4 days a week, 10 hours a day. And without any overtime, that would necessitate the reduction in our workforce. I don't care if it's one route, 1,000 routes, or 50,000 routes. Anything that would reduce our workforce that we agreed to, I think that we would be derelict in our duty and not preserving our craft and making sure that every single member that pays union dues, that their interest is looked out for. I don't care what anybody says when it comes down to that. Now, I know that there has been some discussion relating to whether it is going to be, as the president say, a minimum amount or a tinier bit of routes that's going to be lose or lost, you know, just on the peripherals of it. That math isn't mathing. Now, until you have something that generates some data that can be analyzed and determine how much is going to be lost, that could be debatable. But what is not debatable is that there will be assignments lost. What is not debatable, a resulting effect of assignments being lost, is letter carriers being lost. And however the Postal Service decides to effectuate that loss, either by uh, early outs, by somehow getting some layoffs, by accessing individuals, there's an array of reasons, because the layoff protection covers those that have 6 years or more. But the reality of it is that even before we get to that, there is without a doubt going to be an adverse impact upon our craft. And I've thought about this over and over and over again. There is, in my view, no genuine upside to this. When you come about saying, well, it may very well generate additional income to the service that can be reallocated. This is one of the selling points or benefits that the president had floated, that perhaps this reduction in force and having these additional hours worked and not having to pay overtime for hours in excess of 8 hours to 10, and you just have 10 hours straight time, that savings can be perhaps reallocated towards and repurposed towards letter carrier salaries. I just don't see that happening myself. I genuinely don't. And even if it was to happen, I would see it more of as a one-off, not some perpetual, ongoing situation that would take place all the time, because there's just too many variables that come into play, you know. And I'm not meaning to monopolize the conversation, and I'm uh, bring the other brothers in here, but even something as simple as requiring the letter carriers now to work 10 hours a day at straight time. That becomes the standard of a regular day. That means that without even uh, renegotiating the benefits that the letter carriers have, for example, sick leave, letter carriers earn 104 hours a year of sick leave, those that are in an earning capacity. And they would get essentially 13 days off. Guess what? Now you still earn the same amount of hours, what, 4 hours a pay period, 8 hours a month, and you are utilizing your sick leave now at the clip of 10 hours a day for a day off. You earning the same amount of hours, but you get a reduced benefit, because now you're not going to get the 13 days a year. You'll get down to just a little bit over 10 hours. I mean, 10 days. 10 days. Because you divide the 104 by 10 hours, what do you come up with? Basically 10.4. You have the same amount of hours, but a reduced benefit. And even more so, because letter carriers are going to be working these longer hours as a regular position. Guess what? That means that they need as much of their time off. And this takes us back to the 8 hours of work, 8 hours of rest, 8 hours of recreation. That has been the union way since the 1800s. And now we are going to be complicit in reducing our workforce, complicit in letter carriers perhaps losing their jobs, complicit in adding to the fatigue and the of letter carriers, complicit in making sure that carriers are not really getting paid for what their work is, because now you are out there in a situation in just extraordinary circumstances when it is done without exception consistently. Like I said, because those that it could be argued, those that were on the overtime desired list and so on, sometimes they work all of these hours, but that's a fraction, not every single letter carrier. And moreover, those carriers have an opportunity and the right to remove their name from the list should they decide that they're too fatigued or overburdened or worn out. You don't have such the case here. So we can go off into further discussion about this, but I want to make it unequivocally clear that I James Henry, without without a doubt, or am completely opposed to this 4 and 10.
Well, I just looked this up. We'll be out in a vehicle. Somebody put up the other day the thermometer in their vehicle, and it's 130 degrees. I can cook a something at 130 degrees for 10 hours, a pot roast for 100 at 130 degrees for 10 hours. A pot roast, I can cook that and we can eat it. Your body is going to be out there for that 130 degrees for 10 hours. And my president's agreeing to that shit. That's what I'm talking about. As a city letter carrier myself, I know how hot it gets. I'm lucky because I'm on a walking route, a parking loop. I can get out and it's much cooler on a parking loop because I've got shade, I've got breeze, I've got porches and things like that. But somebody in that vehicle, you can cook a pot roast 10 hours at 130 degrees. And so that's the issues. One of the issues I've got with that is my president doing that. I'm gonna keep on, and y'all just interject when you want. And I know that what was said in there was not supposed to be brought out because it's so fucking hush hush that the carriers who pay the dues for people to go shouldn't know what went on in there because you have to keep it hush hush in there. You're not supposed to talk about things that happen there, which is to me is completely stupid. That we have a collective bargaining conference only for those that went because not that many people went. I mean, you had 100 and something on the executive council and staffers and others, and then you had however many presidents went. So not everybody's privy to what happened in there, but I'm going to say I had about 10 people messaging me. Now, none of the ones on this panel here messaged me. I'll let y'all know that. But I had about 10 people messaging me constantly what this fool was saying. And somebody got up and gave these numbers that 140,000 routes, 140,000 routes divided by 5, which is what you would have, is 28,000 routes. The T6's loss would be around 5,600. You're looking at 32,000 routes gone. That's 32,000 light blue gone. And he said, well, you will gain some in T6 because you have a T6 for every 2 routes. 32,000 routes gone. Now, James, I know that you said that one of the selling points is, hey, you get rid of some bodies and we can pay people more. I don't want to make more money at the expense of my brothers and sisters losing their fucking job. I don't want money that fucking bad. What I want Postal Service to do is fix their own shit and then come to us. But I don't want to make a penny more at the expense of light blue. And if that fool's up there saying that a selling point is that, hey, we get rid of bodies, I can pay y'all more, he can go fuck himself on that. That's
Well,
not
more
what we're
accurate.
supposed to be doing. That's not the union fucking way. Is to
No.
say I can get y'all raise. Y'all want to raise? Yeah. I have to cut about 28,000 jobs and I get y'all a raise.
Well, that
Now,
would be the resulting effect of losing individuals. What he did say is that the the losing the overtime from 8 to 10, essentially, paying the overtime that normally would go, that would increase some type of savings, and as such, that could be reallocated. But to do that, you still would have to end up losing assignments.
exactly.
There's just no two ways about it.
Well, that
So
goes hand in
the
hand.
yeah,
It goes
it
it goes
goes
hand in
hand in
hand.
hand. Yeah, I tell you, my brother, is it's one of these things is that we're in such times that you know when you have to be this creative to try and come up with some savings because we've fallen so far behind on our wages, in my view, as a whole, there are some that do all right, But as a whole, we have not kept pace with inflation. We have not kept pace with the expenses that the letter carriers incur on a regular basis. And as I indicated to you before, that I have monthly bills. I don't have yearly bills. Carriers need to get paid now. But as you said here, in my view, the risk outweighs the reward. You know, at risk of losing even one letter carrier is too much in my view. They
Yeah.
pay their dues, just like everyone else. We have an affirmative obligation to look out for every single letter carrier that we represent. And the service can take unilateral action on certain things like they have been accustomed to doing for however long. But we should not be complicit in any letter carrier potentially losing their job. We should not be complicit in letter carriers perhaps sustaining additional injuries of all sorts of kind because of a negotiated uh, agreement or whatever that we have. But the reality of it is this proposal is under consideration or clearly has been considered. There was a poll, not a poll, a survey that was sent out, said 1,300 individuals. Now, in my view, anybody that understands the basics about any survey or trying to obtain any type of information, you got to have enough that's representative to give you a pretty reasonable snapshot. And I don't think that out of 180, 190,000 letter carriers, active letter carriers, that 1,300 by any stretch of imagination is representative of what the craft in and of itself think. And what those that have to keep in mind as well is that the ones that will be most affected are going to be the new letter carriers or the junior carriers, whether they're going to be lost with regards to some type of reduction in force and however that manifests itself, or the excessing of letter carriers, meaning you saying, well, we got more employees here than we have work and sending them out to different places to wherever. There is a lot of things to be considered. And I know that you have Dave and Rob and Cruz. Dave, what's your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, my thoughts are this like again, I've been a letter carrier for 34 years and part of the labor movement, and I tend to zoom out as opposed to zoom in on this. And by that I mean this with this 10 hour situation. Like you two guys aptly stated, the labor movement, since the dawn of time has advocated for 8 hours of work, 8 hours of rest, and 8 hours of recreation. That concept is solidified in our collective bargaining agreement under Article 8. Our service week is 8 within 5 within 40. Now, last round of bargaining, we got rid of work hour maximums. Something that I personally didn't agree with. We had to go to national level binding arbitration, fought to win that, to stop people from being overworked. There's a reason it's 8, 8, and 8, not 4 and 10. I think a lot of people lose focus on the history of the labor movement. You need to understand that people have died for you to have the right to work 8 hours a day, have 8 hours off, and have 8 hours of recreation. You've had people die for the right for you to take your lunch. Far too often I hear carriers that want to skip their lunch or they don't want to take their lunch. And now I've got, a union, my own union, that's advocating, for the complete opposite of these things. And, like James was, saying, and Corey, you guys were laying out, potential numbers for, potential job losses. It's a very slippery slope without any, concrete data, number one. Number two, the Postal Service has tried to change our work method as carriers, with that Caser Streeter program President Rolando invested, untold amounts of money to send teams out there to fight that, to stop that, because as letter carriers, we've performed our jobs, a certain function, a certain way for a long period of time. They could resurrect that, and now the union's agreeing to keep us out on the street even longer. They could try to resurrect that program and say, all right, you're going to be in the office sorting mail for this long, and you folks, you poor folks on the street, you're going to be in these conditions for 10, 11, 12 plus hours. Folks on the overtime list, who knows? Maybe they're out there even longer than that. I just don't know where we're going with that. And again, the only thing that I can think of is, it's what I tell my carriers all the time. Like in a route inspection, the only reason you're afraid of a route inspection is because you don't know how that process works. If you're afraid of this fight, it's maybe because a lot of us don't understand, what history has offered us, what some people have fought and given the ultimate sacrifice for in the labor movement. And I can't agree with that type of a schedule.
Yeah, it's a great point. And because hypotheticals and guesses, that's all we have right now. We have no data. There's no data about anything. When you're talking, you're saying this could happen, this could happen. People say, well, ifs and buts for candy and nuts, whatever. But that's all we have. All we have right now is, as a city letter carrier, when I look at this, these are the things, these are the pitfalls, the downfalls of this, because we have no data. He's come up with something. And the survey, I don't agree with that. I don't believe it, because he did a survey after the last TA and told us, well, here was the results. I didn't see the fucking results. And so, did y'all see the results of the survey? And he just tell you what the results were?
He just told us.
Well, he's a fucking liar. So I don't believe anything he says. And because he did it last time to us during the TA, and so I don't believe a damn thing unless I see it on paper. To tell me that the results were this. But I'll tell you this, if he said that the results showed that a majority of the younger carriers supported it, they're voting against themselves. They're going to be the ones gone. Corey Walton's not going to be gone. I got 34 years in this motherfucker. I'm not going nowhere. It's them that's going to be gone. Unless they offer some early out. But if you offer an early out of 15 grand like they did last time, ain't nobody gonna go nowhere for 15 fucking grand. It's really pissed me off, if y'all can tell, that this has been floated out there and trying to sell some poor people on, well, you're gonna have some extra days off. Extra days off? I might have 30,000 fucking carriers gone. You think I give a fuck about another day off? Well, you can make some more money. I don't give a fuck about more money. I got carriers going to lose their fucking livelihoods, the things that we've been fucking fighting for forever. Safety. Cruz, hell, you had to put in a fucking shower at your union hall because the carriers couldn't afford a fucking living wage and had to live out of their fucking car. What are you going to tell your carrier?
I'll tell you this much. You guys talk about the case of Streeter. We suffered that. We went through that case of Streeter, and my carrier suffered when we went through that. And that was the most disgusting thing that we ever had. Now, they always say, and excuse me, I'm not trying to offend nobody by saying this, you could be the smartest horse in the stable, but doesn't mean you have common sense. You understand what I'm saying? Because no matter how smart you are, you got to have some common sense. Now, you come out with this great, according to him, this great offer that he proposed to letter carriers. Now, working 10 hours a day, and I'm sure in other parts of this country, anything over 8 hours is considered time and a half locally because of local states. So now you're making us work 10 hours a day. We're going to lose. Now we're going to lose more time with our family. We're going to lose like James says, we're going to lose days of sick leave. We're going to lose days of annual leave. What about the carriers that are on 8 hours restriction? What happens to them?
Exactly. And that was on my list, John. What are they going to do with that? Did he have an answer for that?
But you know,
Nope.
he had a lot of answers to a lot of other things, but you know, he didn't have an answer. But I just don't understand why, as our leader, you will offer the post office this. Okay, well, let me correct myself. It's not an offer. It was just a talk.
Yeah,
But why would you put it out there?
exactly. Why was it even put on a survey?
Well,
What possessed them to do that?
the survey was only sent to 1,300 people. It's expensive. It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it was only it's a difference between a survey and a poll. So that's why they only sent it to 1,300 people. So now who picked these 1,300 people?
It's the same thing as the TA. It's the TA. They sent them out to a select group. How do I get on that fucking select group to get a survey? I ain't got one yet.
I have
But
not
John,
been on. I'm with you, brother.
you're an advocate, John. You do arbitrations,
Yes, sir.
and you made a great point. Article 8, when you talk about overtime, when I go into an arbitration, I've done numerous arbitrations dealing with forced off assignment. And I always tell the arbitrator, and arbitrators will always agree, that Article 8 was not written for those that want to work overtime. Article 8 was written for those that don't. Article 8 was written for those that do not desire to work overtime. That's the reason they're so protected in Article 8. I don't want to work overtime. I want to work 8 hours like my union has fought for. And I want to go home in 8 hours and start my 8 hours of recreation. And then after my 8 hours of recreation, I want 8 hours of rest. But now I've got a fool who was not part of us long enough on the workroom floor, sitting in a vehicle at 130 fucking degrees. I've got a fool up there proposing something, offering something, putting something on a survey that's going to take away those rights under Article 8 for those people, because you talked about, John, the 8 hour restrictions. What are they going to do? That's been a huge question on social media. What are those people going to do? They're saying, well, you could take 2 hours of leave without pay. Well, fuck, what? So many of
The
those,
guys
then
brought up
what?
a point. Yeah, one of the guys brought up a point, and he also brought up a point about what if how would the guys that are on 8 hours restriction this would affect their thrift savings?
Yeah.
Because it would affect their thrift savings, and you know, one of the guys he brought up that point, and you know, it was a question asked, but you know, he didn't have an answer for that. But
Well, John, you're going to go to arbitration for somebody who has an 8 hour restriction and management tries to force them over the 8 hours? You go into arbitration over that, fighting your
of
ass
course,
off for those carriers. They got a doctor, a medical doctor, to give them a restriction that, hey, this carrier cannot work over 8 hours. And the union has fought their asses off in arbitration and through the grievance procedure to protect those carriers, that when management tells them, hey, I know you got an 8 hour restriction, but today I'm going to have to force you to do overtime. We jump up and down on those motherfuckers that do that. Now I've got a president putting us right in that shit. Telling
you know, Corey,
with no fucking answer.
you bring up you bring up Article 8, and you know, just prior to this contract being signed, our last one that got shoved up our ass, um, I was going to arbitration, and I met Skaka. I remember him. He's from Florida, and he said all that hard work we put on Article 8 for you guys just went out the door when your president changed Article 8 on you guys.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what arbitrator Maniscalco tells me I'm during arbitration. All that hard work that arbitrators and us we put to fight for our letter carriers, our president threw it right out the door.
It's because he wasn't one of us. And you still got motherfuckers that are kissing this motherfucker's ass, and I don't get it. Now, Rob, you're a president. What about our bodies? My body, your carrier's bodies. We're talking about safety. Because now I'm on a parking loop and I walk. Now you're going to force me to walk 2 more hours a day because nothing around me is mounted. you're going to force me to walk 2 additional hours a day, however many steps that is, for the rest of my career. That's what you're going to do. I no longer have, I'm on the ODL, but that could be, mounted, whatever. But now I'm going to be forced to have a 10-hour route, 2 more hours on my body during the summer, during the winter, during the snow, during the rain, the excessive heat. Was anything talked about raising our uniform allowance? Because now you've forced me to be out on the route 2 more hours a day, walking 2 more hours. Was anything said about my body? I know that Renfro didn't talk about Corey's body while he was up there, but was anything said about uniform allowance going up? Because now you're forcing me out there 2 more hours a day, walking my ass off. Anything said about that, Rob?
No, not exactly. Um, yeah, I mean, if you were to think about it right now, and I think the NALC's even talked about it, the injuries are out of control for us.
Yeah,
Being out on the street, they keep talking. I think Renfro last year went and did some testimony stuff about workers' compensation. Um, I know what's going on in my branch. People's knees are blown up, the Achilles are blown up.
yeah,
If you got a 8 to 15 mile route, well, now it's about to go 10 to 20 miles. Um,
yes,
I just think what Renfro did was absolutely fucking reckless. Throwing that shit out there, total bullshit. Um, he threw it out there, the post office bit. So they're on the fishing line right now. They're not going to back away from it. Years ago, I used to work for the Machinists Union, and they sold a contract that was terrible for any new incoming people and newer employees, but it was great if you've had some time in. And it was voted for because of that type of stuff. Um, so I've gotten a lot of contact and a lot of calls from people that are not understanding our point of view when it comes to this because they're just seeing the off days, but they don't realize the hell that it's going to absolutely pay on people's bodies.
yes,
And you got the carriers that once you get to a particular age or a point in your career and you're on your back nine, you just want to be eight and skate. And now you're
yeah,
not going to have that opportunity.
yeah.
Let's see what else the post office is doing. Oh, changing start times. They're making start times later. Um, he just set the ball in motion. I can't understand why the hell he keeps feeling that he needs to be the one to save the post office because I don't see the APW, the Rural Carrier Union. I don't see anybody trying to just throw stupid shit out there to save the postal service like he is.
The,
This was a
the
stupid
postal
ass thing to throw out there.
the postal service didn't even try to save the postal service. Those motherfuckers hadn't done the first fucking thing to save themselves. Who's doing it? My dumbass president's doing it.
Well, maybe now
He's the
that's why
one
they said
doing
they're
it.
not broke.
Fuck him. Hey, James, on
Yes,
this,
sir.
you talk. Was any talk about when you talk? And I know that this was just discussions. There's nothing finite about, nothing set in stone about this thing here, but it was on a survey. And if it was put on a survey, somebody had to be thinking about it. It came from somewhere, and it came from my union, my president. Anything talking about extra breaks because we're going to be fighting this shit tooth and nail with these sorry motherfuckers we work for. Tooth and nail. You see them now coming out with scanner messages. I just read you three talking
I do believe
about.
that I do believe that came up, correct? Um, I do believe that someone asked a question regarding extra breaks,
what
coming
was
for
what was the answer? Do y'all remember the
it.
answer?
Obviously, that essentially that there will be so many things that they understand that would have to be considered and addressed as you move forward. If this is something that's going to be done, but it's essentially I'm paraphrasing at such an infancy stage that there's been no robust discussions about that. But those are the concerns. As I give you an example, like one of the ones that Rob was just stating about the start times, you have a lot of offices that have pushed start times back to 8, 8:30, 9 p.m. That means their regular day, if you're starting at 9, your regular day without overtime would not end until 7:30 p.m. And so
Yes.
there's concerns with regards to the uh, the the dynamics of that when it regarding uh, single parents and childcare.
Yes.
When you're talking about those that may be in unsavory neighborhoods and having to be forced to be out there in the dark even longer. And then when you're speaking on when they would perhaps go into no one knows what it would be overtime or would 10 hours over 10 hours be penalty overtime. No one knows at this particular point. But at any rate, once you go beyond your normal 10-hour day, say you assign 2 hours worth of work and your start time is at 9 a.m., that puts you out there to at minimum 9:30 p.m. And you talking about letter carriers having to be approaching how many customers want someone rustling on their porch at 9:30 in the morning, or I mean 9:30 p.m. in the evening, with regarding, you know, even if they're expected to get delivery mail, you don't know who's out there. What if that carrier is running behind, or like it happens all the time? There are so many things that would place the carrier safety in even more greater harm. Now, again, we're not looking at this in a vacuum with regards to that. We understand that there are those that this happened to on a regular basis, but not as a mandate overall. Every single letter carrier will be subjected to this without any type of exception. It doesn't matter if you on overtime. They could very well say, you know what, that neighborhood that you have over there, or that street that's known to have a lot of dogs, you guess what? We'll curtail that and send it out, at a more opportune time. Whether they do it or not, they would have that opportunity to do that when someone's assigned overtime. But if this is just your regular assignment, your regular 10-hour day, then guess what? That option is gone because you're required to effect delivery. What, you're going to do that every single day? No. Whereas overtime could be periodically. And here's what the reality of it: going back to this 8 hours of work, 8 hours of recreation, and 8 hours of rest. That old saying, you can put a yellow dress, dentures, and lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. The standard work day, by and large, is 8 hours. So whether or not we're getting paid overtime for 10 hours, you still essentially is working overtime every day, because the standard, by and large, is 8 hours for a general worker. By and large, there are those, again, I know you got nurses and all these other different things that people work, but by and large, an 8-hour day is considered a work day. And so you can dress it up any kind of way you want to. You can put dentures on it, lipstick, a yellow dress on a pig, it's still a pig. It's still 10 hours worth of work. That's still, even though you're getting paid straight time, it's still, in my mind, overtime work that you're working and not getting the benefit of overtime for. But the overarching concern is, like you said, the reduction in force when it comes to our craft, when it comes down to whatever amount that there may be, is debatable of how much. But what is not debatable is that there will be an adverse impact on our craft with regards to losing assignments. And by and large, for every assignment, there's a regular. So, if you just first blush, you're talking about 20% of your workforce. Poof, kaput, gone. You lose 20% of your routes. Now, like I said, as it was pointed out, that you will gain some more back with the T6s. Instead of having one for every 5 routes, you're going to have one for every 2 routes. However, again, you're still going to lose some. So this start time situation that you would have the benefits when you're talking about the sick leave and the annual leave, if you don't negotiate a different amount, then you are going to be, the carriers are going to be adversely impacted about how much time that they'll be able to take off for rest. If they're still earning the same amount of hours, they're in the same amount of hours, then they're going to have a reduced amount of time taken off because they'll be utilizing 10 hours at a clip opposed to 8 hours worth of clip of time. And so it's just one of those things whereby I don't think that we should be complicit in it. And
Yeah.
again, I am vehemently opposed to that. And I know Dave, John, and Rob have expressed to me one of the reasons why they're on here that they themselves. Where do you stand, Rob, Dave, and John? Tell us where you stand with regards to this.
I think this is trash. You know, think about this real quick. When the Postal Service is adjusting routes right now, it's all messed up. What do you think they're going to do if they're supposed to adjust it to 10 hours? It's going to be 11 or 12. And then they're going to tell us to kiss our ass, and that's it. So, totally against it. I think it was just a complete misstep by our president to even just throw this out there. And now the Postal Service bit, and, they're just, that's it. I mean, I see this moving forward very soon, at least the testing phases. I mean,
Let me touch on that because I wasn't at the conference. I was on vacation. But people are sending me shit talking about the adjustment of routes would be done through core and AI. Is that right?
he did say that. Yep.
So you're going to have a vast reduction in routes. That's not in dispute. Core fucks up everything because they don't have a core tech that knows his ass on a hole in the ground. We're always having to come in there and bail them fucks out when they do things based off of core. You had 1983 come out where Renfro was involved with that, where he shit on us talking about these parameters and talking about they could watch us with the scanners and both parties question us about shit. And he thinks the scanners are the best fucking thing since sliced bread. And now this dumb shit's going to talk about we're going to have our routes adjusted through core and AI. What in the fuck you think's going to happen when they come in there and reduce these routes like they're going to do? The shit show that's going to be. James, you was talking earlier about the consolidated casing, and I think Cruz, that's you or David talking about the consolidated casing?
Well,
Cruz,
yeah, I
that
spoke
was you.
about it. Yeah, because it
Yeah.
happened to us. We were tests. We were the test dummies in Brooklyn.
So think about that. The consolidated casing, the shit show that was. Now you're going to have this reduction in thousands of routes. And Rob, you said it perfectly. They're going to say, hey, these routes, unless it's a joint process, which I don't trust either because TRAP was a complete shit show. But they're going to adjust routes and they're going to say, hey, Corey, this route based off of core in this AI is right at 9 hours and 58 minutes. And then I'm going to get out there because it's not going to be based off of my time. Whose time is it? What $39.99 are you going to use? Some young whippersnapper that's out there running his ass off and you're going to give me his? I mean, how are you going to do that shit? I mean, how are you going to adjust my route to 10? Based off of what? Because my route's not 10 right now. And so I'm going to get 2 hours of something, 2 hours of somebody. And so you're going to put that on there. You say, we're showing that your route's 9 hours and 58 minutes. That motherfucker could be 12. With my slow ass, I'm slow. I'm old. And so, yeah, Rob, you're 100% right. That's going to be the shit show, man. And the problem is, you're like, man, we're fixing to make some fucking money. No, you're not. You're going to be working 10 fucking hours before you start making overtime. Who wants to work till fucking 8 o'clock at night just to get an hour's overtime? God bless. All right, David, go ahead. Your turn.
Yeah,
And that's
so
provided.
Right?
That's provided
Why
is
is it?
overtime.
Why is it that the carrier is the one that always gets hurt?
Exactly.
When the plant can't get the mail to you on time, let's change the carrier's time. When a contract comes up and the post office has no money, let's deflate the letter carriers.
Yeah.
And, it's always the letter carrier. It's always the letter carrier that's hurt. It's always the letter carrier that could do more. And the bad thing is this: as letter carriers and as humans, because letter carriers are dedicated, when more gets thrown on them, what do? They do it because of their dedication.
Yep.
So now we it's just being on it's just what letter carriers do now. But why the fuck? What I'm nervous about and what I'm scared about, and I'm being honest, that your president.
I know, he's yours too.
Yeah, is gonna agree to this and is gonna implement this on us, and that's what I'm afraid of. It's just like the last TA. We voted it down 2-1. He went into arbitration, the arbitration that lasted 2 days. Right? But according to what he said to us at this negotiation thing in DC this past week, he broke down to us how arbitration works, the witnesses, the list of everybody that he brings in of everything. So then he lied to us the last time.
Mm-hmm.
He lied to us the last time. You didn't do none of that at the last. And now what are you going to do again? You're going to do the same thing again if we vote this one down? And I am afraid, because the rumor is that the post office is already talking about this 4 and 10. And like you said, it's always bullshit. The post office always talks, but they're already having telecoms on this 4 and 10.
Yeah.
So
Same here, Cruz. I've been hearing it out of Milwaukee.
It's out there already. It's out there. So most likely, our president, he was the one that said that he put it out there. He put it out there, and he was the one that threw it out there. And then he said at the end of everything that nothing was written in stone. But at the end of the day, are we gonna get stuck with this? That's all I gotta say for right now. Yeah.
David, what about you?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, I mean, I'm not a fan of this 4 and 10 thing, again, based on the labor history platitudes and what that contract says. We brought up AI a little bit here, and again, some other unions are ahead of us. The Teamsters, for example, have it in their collective bargaining agreement with DHL and UPS, that they're not allowed to build delivery assignments based on AI, and they basically have the agreement like we have with MSPs that can't be the sole determinant of discipline. So Teamsters are up and on this. Where I want to interject something here, we're talking a great deal, obviously, about the contractual rules, work methods, and how this could potentially affect that if it does go into effect. I want to shift gears and talk about something that scares me even more than my contract. And I believe it's called the United States Postal Service. We offer a service to the community. We have solidified in the law, and we fought a long time in Congress to get a law passed that we have 6-day delivery.
Correct.
You go to 410s, okay? I'm not Kreskin crystal ball type of guy, but how simple of an argument of, hey, your regular work week was 8 within 5 within 40. Now it's, 4 within 10 within 40. I don't think the Postal Service needs that, quote, extra day of delivery. And now I'm in the halls of Congress. I'm battling, all of our enemies from, UPS and our competitors to, the folks that just don't like us, in Congress. We're going to have our hands full. We're going to have our hands full, defending from a contract that is, going to shorten carriers' lifespans, in my opinion. And then we're going to be fighting again a separate battle, potentially, in the halls of Congress to save the service to the American public. There's going to be a lot of fighting. So,
Well, the PMG.
And what do you think there, Corey and Dave and my man Rob and Cruz? the Postal Service. You don't think that they would turn that on its head and say the union negotiated that you have this 10-hour day. You've demonstrated that it is totally acceptable and normal to work 10 hours a day and as just regular. And they then structure these assignments. And again, this is all speculation and just, in my view, to some degree foreseeable, based on the Postal Service demonstrated conduct. Say your demonstrated conduct, as they actually use the term, has demonstrated that carriers can and is allowed to work 10 hours a day, be out on the street for all this amount of time on a consistent basis. And then they start reducing office time even more, like you had pointed out so earlier, Corey. Start reducing time even more, having less carriers come in based on that model that they had, the consolidated casing, and have fewer carriers coming in casing mail, and then having more going out on the street and delivering for 9-10 hours straight. Just doing that. And again, we become complicit in there as a union. That is something that we cannot open ourselves up to. I don't think that it would be advantageous for us or wise to do so. Just as David pointed out here, you don't think that this would not be a peekaboo for reduction or getting rid of the 6-day delivery, or whether you're going down to 5-day or 4-day? Certainly, particularly on all the arguments that they make that we've been hearing over and over and over again. We need to take a stand about making sure letter carriers have a living wage and that their jobs are secure. You go back to the longshoremen, that's was something that they were protecting against, making sure that their people were protected. They wouldn't agree to the language that would affect the reduction in their forces there. You know what I'm speaking on? So
Yeah.
we need to model ourselves off that. I don't care if it's one. I said it earlier. I don't care if it's one carrier. One carrier too many.
Well,
They depend on us.
I've always said this. In every single thing that you do, put the city letter carrier first. In everything that you do, you put the city letter carrier first. If you're putting the city letter carrier first, you would never propose something that's going to reduce our workforce. This clown hasn't put the city letter carrier first in the first damn thing that he's done. Nothing. You look at the TA. He may have thought that TA was fantastic. The best thing he could do was this TA. That's all he could get. When it was voted down, he was obligated to follow the will of the carrier and go to arbitration. And he shit on us. This cat has never put the letter carrier first. And everything that I talk about, Brother Gates, you see that. The stationary events, you see that. HIP, you see that. This 1983, you see that. Now this bullshit, you see that. This motherfucker is dangerous to the city letter carrier. I've said it before. I'll say it again. And I'll say it until this motherfucker gets voted out. He's dangerous to the city letter carrier, but he's not one of us. You look at what the Postmaster General said. He said, David, we need to go to 5-day delivery. He said that. That's his objective.
And
also
increase non-career employees.
Exactly. More non-career employees. Now, where would that come in handy? How about 4 10-hour days? Because everybody thinks, well, shit, if I get called in on my day off, you're not going to get called in on your day off. The man done told you he's going to bring in more non-career. That's who's going to do that fucking time. I just believe that the blueprint was set out. More non-career, do away with overtime, 5-day delivery, and just miraculously a 4-day delivery was put on some survey that was sent out, and 60 or 70% agreed with it, and all of them are junior carriers. It to me, it's just I don't know. Am I just coming up with something with some bullshit right there? And then you're talking about these lead carriers that are going to be closing out or whatever. You know, have y'all heard about that? Is that something am I dreaming that because I'm on medication? Have y'all heard about the lead carrier? I know I read that somewhere, didn't I?
I see people keep proposing it.
Yeah. Well, see, management, they're going to come in and work 8 fucking hours on the split. And they're going
I
to say,
thought we
hey,
already had lead carriers as 204Bs.
yeah, you know, and so they're not going to, you won't see a reduction in those motherfuckers. I know I read that thing that somebody sent me the other day. But you see all these fucking job fairs still going on. What they're going to do is overpopulate themselves. They're going to cut about 20%. Say, hey, we do what we're supposed to do. We cut 20% of the managerial workforce. Well, because you keep hiring the motherfuckers. You keep having these damn job fairs. They're all over the fucking scanners everywhere else having these job fairs. And so they're going to hire all these extra managers, then cut about 20%. Said, hey, we do what we're supposed to do. Now it's y'all's turn. And we got a dumb fuck up there in Renfro that's going to say, well, hell, I got something for you. We'll go to 4 10-hour days, cut about 30,000 routes. And then you can give my carriers a couple of pennies an hour. That's what I see. Anybody else see that?
That sums it about. That's about right.
Yeah, yeah. But you know, going back to the brakes, you know, I know that you said that they had talked about that. A lot of things are going to have to be rearranged as far as the brakes because safety to me is paramount. It's got to be paramount in this. There's nothing else that matters during this 10-hour workday if you're going to mandate it for everybody to be out there 2 more hours a day, mandatory. That's the reason some of my people are not on the list. They don't want to work over 8 hours. Now you're going to mandatory them every single day to work 10 hours a day. Like I said, in all the elements. You got the M39, 242.341 that talks about 2 10-minute breaks and a 30-minute lunch. That's going to have to be redone because you're not going to force me to work 10 fucking hours and on the same fucking break schedule. You know, that's something that's going to have to be worked out. We're going to be fighting with management over that shit because those motherfuckers can't do nothing right. They're going to try to bilk us out of everything they can on that. You see these people keep it moving, beating the heat with that shit. I read you these scanner messages earlier where management saying, hey, get a drink of water, keep going, these stationary events. We didn't address stationary events. Now here you're going to keep me out there 10 fucking hours talking about stationary events, keep it moving, beat the heat. My people are going to fall out dead because my stupid ass president can't get his fucking head out of his ass.
Corey, that's the problem we have right now is they don't give a shit about our safety with 5 8 hour days. So now we're
No,
about to move it to 4 to 10 hour days and think magically that they're going to actually care about us. Absolutely not. That's why we need to put our foot on their damn necks right now.
well, I think they should make that fucking munchkin motherfucker president we got go sit in a fucking vehicle in the summer, the entire fucking summer, and say, now what do you think about 4 10-hour days? Have that dumb fuck go sit in a vehicle all damn summer. That's all he does. Every day he comes in for 4 fucking days, go sit in that fucking vehicle with that fucking fan in there like a fucking confectionate oven, just blowing fucking hot 130 fucking degrees in your face. Have that dumb fuck go do that all summer and then see what he thinks about having my people out there for 10 fucking hours a day, mandatory.
I mean, what happens if we go 4 to 10? What is going to happen to these carriers in these rough neighborhoods?
Yeah,
That's
that's what
that's one of
James
the
was
biggest
saying.
things. You know, not only that, I'll tell you this much, guys. Unfortunately, you know, our cost of living out here in New York is very expensive, just like in California, and I'm sure in other parts of the country. But I have a lot of carriers that still live in shelters. And now you make them work 4 to 10. I mean, you know, you do that 4 and 10. the shelters close by a certain time here. And if they don't make that curfew time into that shelter, they got to sleep in the street. And that's what a lot of my carriers will go
Yeah.
through, because a lot of carriers live in shelters.
Yeah, that's
So
unbelievable.
yeah,
That
yeah,
pisses me off every time you talk about it, John. I get pissed off again. I'm already pissed off. Now I'm doubly pissed because you just said that.
just last week, about 2 weeks ago, I had another carrier committed suicide, and and he was out for a year. He's been out. Well, he was out for a year, waiting for pending arbitration. Pending arbitration for them, when we still don't even have a pending arbitration date for him. So he was going through a lot himself in the personal life, and then I guess it got the best of him. So he committed suicide. But that's another thing. There's the arbitration system. Just the grievance process is just horrible. Besides this 410, the non-compliance on grievances is just beyond. And
Well, just think of all the arbitrations, the thousands of arbitrations on mandatory and all that. All of them are gone. Everything we've ever fought for out the fucking window. Lake Charles, gone. All the times I've been down there fighting for them, gone.
All
Because
those
this
things are
dumb
certainly
fuck.
potentials. I said, no, all
Yeah,
of that stuff is certainly potential. And these are some valid concerns that we have. And, and the one thing is, you'll have those out there saying, well, we're presenting things, that have not yet to manifest itself. But what we are presenting here is our disdain for the consideration of the uh, clear burst impact that it's going to have on the letter carriers. And we have, like I said, an affirmative obligation to look out for every single letter carrier. How do we call ourselves a union when we often say and have said forever, an injury to one is an injury to all? Well, if one carrier loses his route, then for us, all the rest need to be standing by and fighting for it. If there are assignments, and those, assignments are abolished, reverted, that thing is something of a common nature. But when you're looking, give or take 20% of your assignments, that is something that should give pause to everyone to say, all right, is this something that we really need to do and something that we moreover should do? Come on. If you have 5 routes and you get rid of one, that's 20%. I don't care if you went to MIT or went to the Compton Unified School District. I went to in California. It still equates to 20%. And we need to make sure those that feel that there will be a benefit to the carriers by potentially having more time off. Nothing has been done whereby the rules change that if the contract is violated, grant, be it otherwise illegal, immoral, or unsafe, you have to follow that rule. So when management mandates you and say that, yes, on those 3 days that you normally would have off, or those 5 days that you perhaps would have, every 5 weeks, I think you said something to that effect, that management can say, I'm mandating you for this 1 day, I'm mandating you this 2 days. They do it now for people that are on their long weekends. Mandate people to come in and work. That is not going to change. You think now the only difference that would be, opposed to you coming in and having to work 8 hours, you're going to come in and work 10 hours for the other day or two of your days off. And then what do? Those kind of things, there's nothing that's going to prohibit management from exercising their rights as management to manage, as they would say. So,
Yeah.
I mean, let's look at things for how they are and not the way that we wish that they would be. We wish that they would comply. We wish that whatever it is that is presented, that it would be done so in good faith and would be adhered to. But history, it repeats itself all the time. It has demonstrated, the Postal Service has demonstrated that they're going to always do what they believe is in their best interest, period. And more often than not, what's in their best interest does not necessarily nor always align with what we believe is our best interest. Now, we do know that without a postal service, there's no NALC, but they have an obligation to, like you indicated, to clean up their own house. I said, don't come cry poverty to me with 2 loaves of bread under each arm. There are other ways to skin a cat. If you need, and we want to get our letter carriers, which we do, additional compensation, raise the rates, stop failing to comply with settlements, all kind of other different things that can redirect money into the coffers, opposed to taking away all the overtime. Because here's what one harsh reality of it is. We give up getting the 8-hour day. We give up the carriers getting paid 8 hours. Getting paid in overtime for over 8 hours. We give up penalty overtime starting at 10. We'll never get it back. We'll never get it back. So that in and of itself is dead on arrival, as far as I'm concerned. We will never get that back. And so, and everyone, if you're privileged enough to live a long life and have a long career, what comes to one comes to all. You may be young and spry now. There's going to come a time where you're going to wish that you're able to have an 8-hour day. So these are things that are a major concern to me.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And, the discussions need to be had. I get that. People are probably thinking, well, hell, all y'all doing is pulling out the bad parts of it. Again, safety will always be number one. It will always be number one. It has to be number one on the list. This is unsafe, period. You cannot convince me otherwise that this is not unsafe. James, you're talking about childcare. Mothers, single mothers, or fathers who have their kids, they will pay a penalty after a certain amount of time. That's the reason a lot of them have to work 8 hours and be gone so they can get their babies. They'll pay a penalty. So they're not going to be making overtime, working 10. And whatever they make on those last 2 hours, they're going to give up. They're going to give up for the penalty of having to pick up their kids late because you're now forcing them to work 10 hours.
And there's no guarantee that after 10 hours that would be penalty.
Yeah.
Or I'm sure they probably would get some type of agreement that would be at minimum overtime, but there's nothing that says that now would be a penalty, because guess what? The standard has changed as to when overtime begins.
Well, an injury to one is an injury to all, like you said. What about them? What about those with childcare? Single mothers, single fathers that had to go pick up their kids. Now you're going to say you're going to work 10 hours of straight time. And I know that you had to pick up your kids at 4, and you're going to be working 2 hours over that. You're not going to be getting off till 6:30. Now they're going to be losing money because of this dumbass idea. Because they're going to be making straight time. And if it's a young lady, a single mother that doesn't have much time, going to be making $20-something an hour, and having to pay childcare, doing everything she can to provide. You don't give her a living wage. And, it's just a shit show. And I don't fucking like it. But, the discussions need to be had. I know that he said that the pilot program is going to be the S&DC, is kind of what I heard. Maybe I'm wrong. Is that right? That they look at the pilot program being an S&DC?
If it was to have one, there's no agreement for a pilot program as of yet, but it appears that he concedes that if something was to go forward, that a pilot program would be something necessary to obtain data. What say you, David?
Yeah, absolutely. That's And that was the just general point brought up that, again, you've got to get that data. You got to get that data, whether you get that in an SNDC or whatever way there's a proposal. If you're even remotely going to explore this idea, we need a lot of data before anything happens. Period.
But we do know that we wouldn't be getting no data out of Buffalo because David is the S&DC killer.
There's a way not to give them the data, right?
Well,
Thereby shutting down the 410.
but you look at if you do the pilot program at SNDC, and we were talking about this earlier, the routes are going to be gone. It's the smaller stations that are going to be devastated. It's the smaller stations that I've always talked about. That's the reason this podcast was started. For those smaller branches, the smaller stations that couldn't get education, couldn't send their people to education, those are the ones that are going to be devastated. You got 2 routes in the station, you're going to have an aux route now. You got 1, what are they going to do with them? James, what about accessing? What's the rules on that?
Yes, it's definitely much more complicated or more complex than most people realize because, when it comes down to accessing within the station, within a different craft, there's one set of rules. But if they have to access outside the station, there's no rules, unlike the APWU, who has a limit of how far they could access somebody. I believe it was 50 miles. Right now, they can access a letter carrier to Egypt. Well, not literally, but you understand where I'm coming from. They could send them far away from the station in which they're in. And so these are things that would be inevitable, is that if they have too many people and not enough work, there will be people getting accessed, sent out from their station in which they work in, potentially to the adjacent city or cities far away.
Yeah. And so who is usually accessed? Would those be tenured carriers or carriers with no tenure whatsoever?
Accessing is done by juniority.
And so the junior carriers, the ones who he said were overwhelmingly in support of this shit, again, you're looking at either losing your job or being accessed, like James said, to Guam. They can do that. But again, the discussions need to be had. Like Dave said, it's imperative you get the data. You've got to get the fucking data. He proposed this on a survey with no data to back anything up as far as reduction in routes, reduction in overtime, accessing, amount of accessing, if accessing is at all an option. None of these things the carriers know about. All of us today, everything that we're talking about is hypotheticals.
Right.
That's what this, no, it's not hypothetical about being unsafe. That's not a hypothetical. That's a fact.
No.
You got to put me in my vehicle, like we talked about. He's dead set on helping the service reduce our fixed office time. If it has 20 minutes of fixed office time, and you already see them attacking us on our office time, 45 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever, and putting me in a vehicle 9.5 hours mandatory every day, 9.5 hours, that's unsafe. That's not up for discussion. That's a fact. And then in the snow and the ice, 9.5 hours. In the monsoons, 9.5 hours. In the dark in some questionable parts of town, 9.5 hours. That's not up for debate. That's unsafe. And so, final words. James, I'll let you finish it off. Just Dave, Cruz, Rob, final words on if y'all have anything at all, because I'm getting sicker as I'm talking.
Go ahead, Dave.
Well, national president has a slogan. I think I'm going to modify it a little bit. Hell no.
Rob?
Nope.
You're supposed to follow Dave and say HELL hockey sticks, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's no fighting like hell. So
Yeah. Bruce.
Hell no with this, man. Go Knicks.
Oh, Dix. Yeah. Well, as I indicated to you earlier, you know, my responsibility is to the letter carriers. That's what my duty is, my responsibility. And we have an obligation to fight on behalf of each and every single letter carrier. We have an obligation to provide security to each and every one of our letter carriers. And all of these things that we were talking about, and it's not limited to just those. Those are the things that just stand out on the top of our head. We could go on and discuss for another couple hours and still be just scratching the surface. There's going to be so many manuals, so many provisions, so many unforeseen, so many variables that would have to be addressed that just the sheer volume of that should dissuade us from even considering it. However, should it come to pass that there is some type of pilot program put forth, everyone needs to be completely educated as to what had happened and share all of your thoughts, as we go along now and then. So informed decisions can be made and not be drawn into the light with the prospect of perhaps potentially additional days off that could be usurped from you just by the mere fact of management saying, I'm going to mandate, you know, you to come in on this day, or I'm going to mandate you to work beyond the 10 hours, you know, and it is easily foreseeable. Like I said, right now we have with joint route inspections or even special route inspections, routes that's supposed to be adjusted to 8 hours are routinely in excess of that. And there's nothing that would suggest that that would not be the case with a 10-hour assignment, that it would be in excess of that. And so instead of management trying to make you do 10 hours of work in 8 hours, now you're trying to do 11, 12 hours of work in 10 hours, which would add to your frustration in addition to your physical fatigue. So I hope that the president reconsiders even presenting it for, further review. But should it do so, like I said, you cannot do so without being informed and having additional data that does not exist as of right now that we know. So for me, it's dead on arrival for many, many reasons.
Yeah. Well, I know this, and then I'll let y'all go. If the Postmaster General proposed this in front of that committee, if he said, we're going to cut out overtime, we're going to cut out 5-day delivery, we're going to go to 5-day delivery, and we're going to do all these things, and we're going to propose to the union a 4-day work week, 10 hours a day, I know that the representative of this union would be jumping up and down, raising hell. But because it was our sorry ass leader, you will see some of them back this sorry motherfucker just because it came from his sorry ass. And that's a shame. That is a shame. That it's because of this cowardly son of a bitch that proposed it. You're going to see people jumping in line to kiss this motherfucker's ass on it, knowing that if it was the Postmaster General that proposed this same bullshit, they'd be jumping up and down. And that's all I'm going to say. Hey, guys, I appreciate y'all coming on tonight. Y'all know I love the shit out of you. And we'll do it again when I feel a little bit better. I'm sick, so I wasn't really able to get into it like I wanted to. But But I hope y'all have a great night, guys. Thank you again for coming on.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you,
Appreciate it,
Corey.
Corey.
Thank you, James. Thank you, everybody.
Hey guys, let me ask you.